Hello, this is Waldemar Januszczak, art critic, producer and presenter of documentaries. And thanks for watching Perspective, YouTube's home for classical art. Imagine that you're at a dinner party and you find yourself sitting next to me. And I lean over, all excited, and I tell you that I've just been to China, where I saw some completely unforgettable art. You'll assume that I must mean something old and wondrous, won't you? The Terracotta Army, or the interiors of the Imperial Palace, or some Buddhist treasures. But no, I'm not talking about the past. I'm talking about the present, and probably about the future, too. Because it's fallen to China, of all places, suddenly to become the global leader of outrageous artistic progressiveness. The most extreme art currently being produced anywhere on the planet is, like so many other things these days, made in China. I have this theory that if big changes are afoot in a society, and that society has reached the point of no return, then the people to be keeping an eye on are the artists. If artists start doing spectacularly outrageous things, ripping their clothes off and getting naked, hurting themselves, growing their hair long, then a major upheaval is on its way. And if this theory's correct, then something big is about to pop in modern China. The Chinese have mounted the longest unbroken spell of civilization in our world. 4,000 years of relentless cultural progress. While we were smearing ourselves with woad, they were inventing printing. They've never had a dark age, and they're certainly not having one now. But something dark is going on here. You will see things in this program that will test your taste and may turn your stomach. And if this were a program about your taste, that might be a problem. But it isn't. It's about someone else's. And boy, is it different. Before I left for Beijing, I had fixed up a rendezvous in the fashionably decrepit East End of London, in Hoxton, with two cheeky Chinese artists who now live there. The one on the left is Chai. On the right is JJ. JJ and Chai do wacky things in the name of art. Remember their audacious naked kidnapping of the famous Tony Bear? Word had reached me that these two pranksters were also off to China, where they hoped to eat someone. What are you planning to do?
We try to find a dead body. Try to buy a dead piece of
human dead bodies. And inviting artists, critics, politicians, and intellectual people who are thinkers to having a party. At the same time, we also making dumplings. Use human meat.
Dumplings?
Yeah, to make human flesh dumplings. To serving.
Oh my God, if things go according to plan, I'll soon be swallowing human dumplings. Chinese art at the moment is quite famous for doing outrageous things, quite dark things, and you're doing the same thing. Why?
It's really reflected the country, what is happening now.
Beijing. Who would have thought it? I've never seen anywhere altering itself so quickly. The Olympics are coming here in 2008, and to prepare for them, the capital of China is trying to become a cut-price Manhattan in a hurry. But don't be fooled by these relentless high-rises. They may all look the same, but inside each of these deceptively identikit boxes, there lurks an artist. So, Zhu Yu, did you start making art in art college, or how did you train?
我是从中央美术学院附中毕业。
I've jumped straight in at the deep end and made an appointment with China's most notorious contemporary cannibal, Zhu Yu. He's the Damien Hirst of Chinese art, except that the things Zhu Yu does are much, much stranger. I suppose this is the most controversial piece you've made. Can you tell me about how you came to do this particular performance piece with the eating the baby?
这个作品，我最早的构思还是从这个就说是人性和神性的这个角度来考虑这个问题。因为怎么说呢，就是可能好多上面就是我们人类就是说有个道德的基本的一个标准，就是可能什么都可以以一个东西去规范，可能吃人只是一个潜意识当中我们好像不应该去吃的，但是很多时候我没有把这个东西规定下来，所以我写了一个东西，就写了一个这种公告性的东西，就是说有哪一个民族的宗教，就是宗教在教义当中就都没有说不可以吃人，像基督教就十诫，包括那个就是他在十诫里面说不可以杀人，不可以抢东西，然后不可以怎么着，但是没有规定不能去吃人。然后法律里面，就各个国家的法律里面也很少就是规定说不能吃人，没有把这个说规定成一个条文。所以说这个是我作品的一个，就说是能够构成这些作品的一个，是在道德和法律的这个空隙当中的一个根据。当然这只是前面的头一步。
It's called body art, but that doesn't tell you the half of it. In another notorious act, Zhu Yu cut a chunk out of his own torso and grafted it onto the side of a pig. This is suffering for your art on a messianic scale. I was interested to find out that actually you've got a Christian background. And I say I'm interested because I'm a Christian too, and there is a tradition in Christian art of the body, the wounds of Christ being displayed. I'm sure that must have had some kind of impact on you. Is that something that you're aware of?
当然了，就说是，我觉得这一点就影响很大。就是我作为基督徒的话，对我作品的这种影响特别大。就是当我去考虑生命问题的时候，我可能就说是考虑生命的问题，我接触到了神，学到的就是对基督的认识，在我的这个意识当中就是死亡，然后鲜血，然后伤口，然后就是这种东西，所以我觉得这个里面就是对我影响特别大，在很大程度上是我们害怕死亡，就是怕自己死去，不管是一个个体的人还是一个国家，都是担心自己，就是我死掉了怎么办？所以说从最早古代的这种长生不老的药，到现代科学的这种基因技术，都是在说是想人要永生。在这种情况下才产生了整个文化的一个传统，这是人类文化的一个传统。但真正我想象的是，只有人类，我的作品可能想表述的是，人类只有在不惧怕死亡，或者是很自然的去面对死亡的情况下，才可能有一种新的文化才会产生。
Zhu Yu only owns 2 light bulbs and 1 cup. He's the leader of a deliberately frugal life. I'd expected to be horrified by him, yet found him peaceful, monastic, and even charming. When the cameras are switched off, He admitted he'd vomited twice before going through with his baby-eating performance. But it was crucial to do it, so he forced himself. At my hotel in Beijing, I get a call from JJ and Chai. There's been a change of plan in their performance. They need to tell me about it.
Gentlemen, nice to see you in Beijing. How have you got on with your attempt to get the body? JJ.
We just thought we had a even better idea. In fact, we dumped the body, but we got the real organ from the body, from a special source. The organ is human genital.
So you're no longer going for the whole body; it's the human genitals.
That's right. And the genital that we're planning to do is to put the genital in the
Chinese spirits.
Put in the container with the Chinese spirits. So we're going to serve it to all the Chinese art critics, artists, and creators in Beijing. The penis is a 19-year-old boy who, for the source that we got, we know that the boy is 19 years old, and he wants to be transplanted. He wants to be a girl. That the doctor cut the penis off, and they created a vagina for this boy. So the penis now in our hands.
You can't quite tell if Beijing is going up or coming down. What a state this city's in. Driving round the mess, I kept glimpsing a familiar piece of graffiti, a human head sprayed on the walls. I assumed it was the work of some run-of-the-mill vandals who mess up every city, everywhere these days. But no, the heads turned out to be the handiwork of a mysterious urban guerrilla artist called Zhang Dali. It took a couple of days to track down this masked avenger who never shows his face. I was surprised to find him living in unlikely luxury on the 7th floor of a notably plush apartment block. Some of the graffiti artists that I've met, for example, in New York, I mean, they tend to be juvenile delinquents almost. I mean, real wide boys, kids from the streets. You're not that. You're a respectable man. You've obviously done quite well. Is there a tension between the kind of work you do and the sort of life you lead, the kind of person you are, between respectability and outlawhood?
不一样，因为在中国你要做一个 graffiti 是跟纽约是不一样的，因为纽约他们是这些小伙子、年轻人，他可能是住的不稳定，他这么做。但是我想我在中国做这个 graffiti 这个艺术，我有另外一个，就是我要解决的问题，就是说，在中国这个公共场合，永远就不许私人去挑战、去说话。 就是说，我要争取一个权利，特别是在公共场合说话的权利。
The two kinds of graffiti art that you do, which I've seen, is sometimes you just write your name or your tag, AK-47. Sometimes you actually make a profile. What are the two different things you're doing there?
我最早我开始要做 graffiti， 我想我要画一个什么样的一个东西，是在城市里，所以他就从我个人的形象来了。 但我想画了很多年，就这样慢慢画下去以后，实际上这个头，它已经不能代表我个人了，它就指一种人，实际上就是这种城市的变化，然后这城市里这些人。我画的那个 AK-47是反映这个城市的一种暴力，因为我觉得这个城市慢慢的变大，但是这个城市的管理者并没有把这个城市做得更好。 他们往往是把一些旧的东西弄坏了，但是新的东西他们不会建立。还有从很远的地方乡下来的人到这个城市来找工作，这些人我觉得是一个受到了特别大的一个暴力的压力，因为这些人同样是这个城市的公民，可是他们来了以后，他们并没有受到一个良好的待遇，所以我想说的就是这样的一个暴力。这种暴力就怎么讲？就是说这个城市。 实际上，它 他管理这个城市的这个管理者，他应该给所有的公民提供一种机会，提供一种发展或者生活好的一种机会，但是并没有这样。他管理你是把你管住，让你不能动。我说的就是这个管理的问题，这个压力，这个压力在中国一直有，所以这个是一个特别大的一个暴力。
So basically, you're a protest artist.
可以这么说。
We arranged to meet later that night at Zhang Dali's studio. He was going out again to spray more ghosts on Beijing's walls. A middle-aged protest artist on a bike, whose canvas was an ugly new city being built on the trampled-down remains of a beautiful old one. I later heard that Zhang Dali's studio and all its surroundings had been bulldozed down. The masked avenger had been given just 24 hours to pack up and leave. It's brutal, this bashing down of the one-story Beijing of old, the hutons as they're called. Who wouldn't want to get away from it? Whispers had reached me of a secret place outside town, taken over by artists trying to dodge the bulldozers. I found someone who knew the way, and as soon as we were out of sight of the new Beijing, a proper China flooded into view. Artists in China have found an interestingly conducive way to live and work. We're about 2 hours from Beijing here, in an artist's colony, an entire village that's been taken over by aesthetic subversives. The rents are low, the authorities are too far away to cause you much trouble, and the place is packed with fellow troublemakers, offering solidarity, help, and conversation. What do you think is the point in the end of these very painful, outrageous performances that a lot of Chinese artists are doing at the moment? Is there a kind of political point to it? Are you doing something more than just trying to shock the system?
那个可以，就是我这个主要是对我自己对生存一种体验，对生命的一种体验，跟政治没有关系，没有任何关系，主要跟我个人生存啊，我对生命的看法有很大的直接关系，跟政治任何没有关系。对，主要是一种触觉的东西，比如我用舌头去舔，比如用物质滴到我的身上，我称之为叫触觉艺术。
So do the authorities ever come here? Do they check up on all these rebellious artists?
来过，也来过。比如说这边如果做行为，比如大规模的做行为的话，警察还是过来要来问一问，要说一说的。那么像美协，中国美协他们就不管这些东西，他们觉得是一种边缘的盲流艺术家，跟官方体制之内那些美协的艺术家有本质的区别，他们就觉得跟他们没关系的。对，所以说这个地方还是很敏感的地方，就是在中国这块，北京这块地方比较敏感的地方。对。
As soon as I got back to the city, the phone went. It was JJ and Chai. They'd found what they were looking for. Would I come over and see it? Did I have to? Yes. JJ and Chai were sleeping on a friend's floor. They'd put their penis in the fridge and asked me not to tell their friend's wife. She wouldn't have understood.
Carefully in the freezer.
You have to take it out.
Doesn't look like a penis. It's
Well,
a different shape from what I imagined.
Wrapped up.
All wrapped up.
Yeah, tissue wrapped up. So
So you're gonna put it in the microwave now.
that's right. It's needs to be defrosted.
So what's gonna happen to it now?
And take 1.5 minutes just to defrost it.
Does it need a couple more minutes in the microwave?
I think it's fine. You can see the.
How does it feel, JJ?
Well, it's quite soft. It's like normal piece of meat.
Ouch. Things were beginning to blur. It wasn't as clear as it had been where the new China began and the old China ended. I'd already come across Mai Luming's work in various outre exhibitions in the West and took him to be a woman. It's an easy mistake to make. He lives in a better class of Beijing skyscraper. Dropping his shorts so ambiguously was obviously paying off. Why did you start using the naked body?
对，这个是也比较偶然的一个机会，我想起这种东西，就有一次跟一些朋友在一起吃饭的时候，然后有朋友有相机，然后他们就我们在一起拍照嘛，也有女孩，我们就好玩就换着衣服，然后之后看这个照片就觉得，哎，这个形象特别像女孩，对，然后我就想可不可以用自己的这个形象用在自己的艺术里面。对，最开始的时候我就是那个穿那个女孩的衣服来拍照片，然后后来我就觉得这种东西给人感觉是比较简单的，好像是一种性别的转换的东西，但这个东西又不是我真正想要做的一个东西。后来我就想，那我就利用我这个脸这个比较秀气的这样的一个形象，然后呢，就是男性的身体，然后暴露出来，这样给人感觉的可能会更有意思一些。这样我就开始。就是说，在我的艺术里面用裸体的这种形式。
Your paintings, which are really extraordinary to look at, you feature in most of them, I think, don't you? That's your face, although you're a baby, sometimes you're a mother, you're the adult, you're the father. You're playing games not only with gender but also with age.
我就是画这种画是从93年开始的，那个时候就是我开始做这种行为艺术的时候。对，那个时候我觉得比较有意思，就是这个成人的脸和小孩的身体这种组合，因为小孩的身体是一种，在性特征上是不明显的，这样的，所以我觉得这种组合比较有意思。
Your recent performances have been different from the ones in the past. You're not so interested in this gender exploration. What kind of things are you doing now then?
我做了几年了，就是跟观众合影的，睁着眼睛的，那个是化妆的，那个还是延续以前的那种形象上的东西。后来我就让这个分马六民这个形象，就是吃安眠药，然后让他睡眠，这个我想是很大的一个变化。
迎春会在冠前街白云路设置了由华天饮食集团公司主办的老北京民俗小吃节。参观现场。
Where the hell am I? After an intense week on the Beijing art trail, I was beginning to feel paranoid. The authorities wouldn't have welcomed my presence here. I was investigating an art they officially disapproved of and had tried to ban. Was I being watched? It felt like it. Needing a break, I decided on a quick hop over to what used to be my side of the capitalist fence. Hong Kong. Mai Luming told me that he made his living by selling his work here. This was his gallery. Its owner, Mr. Johnsen, is a Hong Kong supporter of various Beijing rebels.
The big advantage of most Chinese artists today is that they have a common background in training. And this particular artist, he grew up in the army. He is trained in the traditional Soviet art academy style of painting. And now in middle life, he decided to do something for himself. And in the last 10 years, he has evolved in different directions. This is his latest. Tang Zhigang is from Yunnan, southwest China. His father is in the military. His mother was a jail warden during the Cultural Revolution. So he learned to paint and learned a lot of things about Chinese history, Chinese culture through his relation with prisoners. But in those days, prisoners were very different. A lot of them were class enemies. So they could be university professors, landlords, and a lot of cultured people.
Some of the artists that we've met really are very radical. For them to adopt these brave and sometimes outrageous methods when they've come from this kind of training, that must be not only a brave decision but a difficult one.
Yes, but it makes the decision much easier. There are a lot of people around cheering them on. And the whole art world in China is a very closely knit community. Most of the artists you see, the very experimental artists and more radical ones, have gone through this whole art academy system. So they're members of a special club. And it's very difficult to get into art academies in China.
What is it, though, that's pushing these artists to such extremes? Because some of the things we've seen would look outrageous even if they were in a mainstream biennale in Britain or Venice or anywhere where modern artists gather.
Well, I think when we look at China, after all, in the last 100 years, it's thrown out its own imperial system. It has changed its whole direction of culture many times. And then Mao Zedong started to institute this perpetual revolution idea. In fact, China has been really the most radical country in that sense, dealing with its own culture and its own politics for the last 100 years. And it's now very much a tradition and a part of the modern Chinese culture.
Hong Kong is what Beijing is trying to turn itself into. But no grand old city had to be destroyed in order to fashion this fine new one. Yet even here, the old ways are tenacious. They cling on. They just won't go away.
This is a big jar of penises from poisonous species of snakes.
What about this jar here? You've got bits and pieces of...
This looks like African antelope horns, which they grind into a powder and they also mix into the wine. It's also kind of an aphrodisiac.
Aphrodisiac?
Yeah.
So what kind of people come into this place? I mean, is it basically people looking for medicine, or...?
I think middle-aged men.
But it's a very traditional place, obviously.
Yeah,
these kinds of places have been around in China for hundreds of years, yeah?
Mostly in the south. Yeah. Very traditional.
Better weather for snakes here.
Right.
It looks wicked, I must say. Right to the top. Just have to drink it in one go, or...?
一次飲晒定係分幾啖啊？分幾啖。Few. 慢慢飲都唔。Slowly.
Sip it slowly.
Yeah.
So, which particular medicinal use does this have?
Good for your complexion. Makes you young.
Yes. I bet it does.
It revives your essential elements.
Knocks you out is what it does, doesn't it? That is very strong. I'm back in Beijing, and this is an encounter I've been dreading. He works with frozen corpses. She makes things out of human fat. So, like all successful couples, they have much in common. Perhaps we could talk about this particular work. It's one of your famous pieces. It's the one that I've seen before. Perhaps you could just describe it for us and tell us what you were trying to achieve there.
这个作品是我对一个就是
死亡这个场景的一个想象。我想这个场景是这样，就是一个老人和一个小孩，他们都是死亡的，共同进入这个世界，但是他们可能经历了不同的过程。他们在一起像这个共同对话，或者共同这个互相给予对方这个爱护关心，就是来这个共同交流这个死亡的过程或者是体验，就是有一种这样的感觉。这个它的本身的两个放在一起的这个感觉仿佛不是死了，而是在那个好像是活着或者很亲近的样子。那么这是一个那个我希望消除这个死亡的这个恐惧感，而是比较安详的。
我用这样的材料做了作品以后，我特别大的感觉是，人的身体绝不能代表你的思想，就是绝不是代表你。我有一次去那个医院的解剖的楼，然后我去找一个大夫，但是整个楼里都没有人，但是那一个楼都是放尸体的地方。我在那个楼里找了半天，然后我进了一个楼的一个门，我打开门一看，是一地的头。我想那是因为他们要上那个脑神经的课，要上一个脑神经的课，所以很多的学生需要很多的人头。这个时候我回来的时候，我就想，就是在我在做作品我做这样作品的时候，是针对艺术在做一种治疗，是针对艺术的一种治疗，就跟大夫针对人的脑袋的病做脑神经的治疗一样。
我不太理解。
So tell us about this.
当时我们正决定要结婚，连接在一起。他好像就是这个就是经历了一个死亡的过程，然后再连接。可以看到这两个小孩实际上是一个人，也不能说是一个，因为他们是一个连体，你明白是个连体，他们那个生下来身体就连在一起，而且是面对面，就是互相永远不能够回避，这个就像两个人在一起生活，就是你永远要面对对方，所以那个我在当时我们俩都是做了一个很长时间的考虑，就是到底要不要结婚。那么这个过程的感受就像这个作品所表达的一样。
You're such a romantic, aren't you?
是吗？你第一次有人这样说，在你之前，那个除了我自己，没有人认为这很浪漫。
Peng Yu showed me a column she'd sculpted out of human fat to memorialize our lack of human achievement. She has a point there. And then out came proof of something very unsettling. A living curtain of writhing reptiles and amphibians and crustaceans. It wasn't just snakes she'd strung up in a gallery, but everything that crawled.
对，这个材料是在北京你可以经常看到的东西，并且在那个夏天的时候，你去那个就是晚上开饭馆，就是比如说东直门那一条街，他们一晚上能吃掉很多吨的这个龙虾，所有的人都在那儿吃龙虾，然后那个门口摆的全都是一筐一筐的这个龙虾。两个方面来那个就是两个层面上来解释这个作品，我做他们的时候要保持他们都是活着的，然后在开展的时候，观众看到的是很多活的东西，在这个帘子上在挣扎。我的意思是，我的想法的意思是说，那个每一个人可能就和一个龙虾一样，在这个社会里面，在那个就从生命生出来到死，都是扮演着一个自己，都是在扮演一个自己。就是他必须要待在这个地方，从生到死，一直到他的生命结束。
I was beginning to realize that there are these stubborn patterns to Chinese art. ancient in origin that no amount of modern scrubbing can remove. It isn't just this 3,000-year-old sense of things writhing crazily that unites the present with the past, although it certainly does. I'm thinking more of the continuing impact of superstition and ritual. Scratch one of Beijing's outrageously modern artists, and you'll find, just below the surface, that they're hooked on the same strange horoscopes as their predecessors. Witness the case of Cheng Ling. From the look of her, you'd assume that butter wouldn't melt in this fragile girl's mouth. But just look at what she makes and hangs on her walls.
What were the first types of works that you made that you're proud of, that you think really showed an independent you?
因为我的作品不是特别多，所以我觉得这个作品实际上还是挺完整的。对，这个作品我做了1年，就是12个月，就每个月，就真的来例假的时候，然后拍一个。
Did you have trouble deciding how to make a piece about that subject matter?
因为我大学毕业以后，差不多，因为我没有找工作嘛，然后就很自闭的在住的地方待了好几个月。因为那个自闭的时间比较长，你会对1个月你的那个情绪和身体的变化你都会有感觉。然后比如说你对那个阳光从天慢亮起来到暗下去，就是对这种，还因为我喜欢花，对植物慢慢的生长，就你会有一种很特殊的那种感受。
It must have been a very difficult work to make because it's very, very personal. Did it cause you emotional anxiety to actually produce this?
我刚才说我的作品有一个非常传统的背景，就是自然。其实这个是特别自然的，其实是很自然的，对吗？我在我的文章里说到，这个作品其实需要被那个观众看，因为观众看完了以后会有各种各样的反应。但这种反应呢，就是在那个传统的哲学里面，就是其实自然是没有什么是非或者对错，它只是这样而已。
It's the big night at last for JJ and Chai. They've hired a bar for their performance in a trendy nightclub area that foreigners like. If you blew up this room right now, you'd blow up most of the movers and shakers in the Beijing art world. Mr. Li certainly stands out. I'm told he's the Charles Saatchi of China, Beijing's biggest supporter of shocking art. He's supposed to be under house arrest right now, and the government's banned him from fraternising in any way with artists. But here he is, fraternising like crazy.
You must have seen very big changes in the art scene here in Beijing. What do you think is the most important change that's happened?
自由度，就是艺术家原来的那种和这个意识形态的关系很密切。以前，尤其以前的70年代以前的艺术，它会受意识形态的控制或者受官方控制。但从80年代开始，就越来越艺术家变得很自由，变得能自己来表达自己的感觉，而不是表达被某一种东西控制的那种感觉。
Is it true that at the moment you've been banned from involving yourself in the art world, and that really it's very brave of you even to come to a performance like this?
你想不想看这个事？
这个问题，因为不是最近，因为这20多年我一直会有麻烦，但是麻烦我觉得是不重要的一件事。对于我来说，我在做我自己做的，只要我不违背我的良心，我就坚持这种东西。会有麻烦，我觉得对我来不重要。
我最感兴趣的是蔡元和西新彦君对于做艺术的一个方法。那么也就是说，今天我们根本不需要再多的作品，而需要把现在的世界上有的作品把它清除掉。清除的过程中间，如果显现出精神的意义，这就是作品。这是我的理解。
很多艺术家也陷入了这个里面，陷入到这种物欲的里面，就是他 可能以前是很前卫的，但是后来被这个金钱的这种物欲，然后很腐烂的，很腐烂。
北京的艺术家、批评家、策划人，我和习彦君这次来到北京，非常感谢大家聚会，所以我们准备了一瓶这个屌酒啊，准备和大家就是欢聚一下。以前呢，就是都是牛鞭啊、羊鞭啊之类。今天我们想喝一喝屌酒，喝真人的屌酒，真人屌酒。所以，老西啊，咱们先来吧。各位朋友，如果大家可以都享受一下大补。试一试啊！好，这是屌酒啊，好酒啊，大补啊！喝了日酒就补。如果谁想喝，杯子都在这儿。
There weren't many takers at first for the penis wine. I wonder why that is. But fearless as usual, our old friend Zhu Yu strode out of the nightclub shadows to show us wimps the way.
不行了，起来了，
起来了，有效果。开天辟地第一回，有人喝屌酒，开创世界纪录。
I'm disappointed in JJ and Chai. They've been in England too long. Their jokey performance is pretty much indistinguishable from a night out at Soho House, with liquid Viagra going cheap. But someone is taking the proceedings seriously enough. A drunken American suddenly starts howling abuse at our crew for not joining in.
You are a fucking outsider! And if you can't figure that out, then you're gonna have to deal with me, James! You are a fucking racist! You're the racist!
JJ and Chai are delighted. They finally have a real performance on their hands.
The UK has just asked you to have a drink with him. And you're so fucking superior. I mean, Jesus
That's your interpretation of events.
If you were Damien Hirst, would you do this?
The next day, the boys failed to turn up for the post-mortem we'd arranged. Rumours had spread that plainclothes spies from the PSB, the dreaded Public Security Bureau, were also there last night, and the boys decide the smart thing to do is to leave town. As for me, I was keen to rejoin the grown-ups. I'd heard about an artist who'd caused a rumpus on the Great Wall of China by mounting an impromptu performance there, topless. She was also performing that night at Beijing's most fashionable art gallery, a snazzy complex of white cubes on the edge of town, apparently built without planning permission, that never advertises any of its shows in the press and relies solely on word of mouth and those damned Chinese whispers.
我今天做的那个行为叫幻影，但是我铺这个，因为有人在操纵这个光，我就永远铺着抓不到它。就是这个光，我觉得是在我的生活当中，也可以说在很多人生活当中都在寻求光，但是它是一个虚幻的东西。 我们永远不可能抓住它。我觉得生命里很多东西很无奈，被人摆布，有时候生命就，有的时候我感觉很无可奈何。
So why did you take up performance?
这个做行为艺术和我自己的身世有关。
What sort of personal life experience do you mean?
对，和我的生活经历有关。但是，其实，在做这个行为，做长城那个行为之前，我没有想过要做行为。我觉得我现在做行为是无意中做到现在这样。因为我从小生活的环境是因为我的妈妈在我5岁的时候精神失常，就是疯了。然后那个时候是文化大革命期间，我的妈妈是我18岁的时候生的我，都是工人，在一个工厂里面做工。因为未婚生育我，后来遭到很多的侮辱和唾弃、羞辱。后来我的母亲就神经失常，就疯了，然后披散着头发就往外面跑，她要逃，但是不知道逃到哪里去，脑海里我就一直无法摆脱。而且我每次，特别是我成长以后、长大以后，我想着我妈妈的这个事情，就是赤身裸体在街上的奔跑的这种事，我觉得是我自己脱光衣服在外面，而不是我的母亲。我做了长城这个行为以后，很多人就对我很有看法，因为以前我在四川美院，我丈夫和儿子在四川美院。他们就觉得何晨瑶是一个贤妻良母，是一个标准的一个中国传统妇女。但是自从在长城上做了这个行为以后，他们就觉得我不是这样的人，觉得很多人，包括我的朋友、我的老师，都觉得我投机，就是为了出名。所以后来我就有意识的，我感觉是有一种对抗。
I was in a culture where nudity was still serious, where the human body still stood for truth, and where this truth could affect people. I got back from He-Yun Chang's performance feeling strangely uplifted. This was what performance art was all about. This was how it should be, how it no longer was in Hoxton. For 4,000 years of unbroken civilization, Chinese art had maintained a precarious balance between darkness and delicacy, between the brutal and the refined. Both were always there.
What seems to be happening now is that the delicate side of Chinese creativity, the elegance, the lightness of touch, have been temporarily put aside, as the authorities set brutally about the business of cleaning up Beijing for the upcoming shop window Olympics, demolishing the hutongs, kicking out the undesirables. The undesirables are fighting back with the only weapon they have available, themselves, their bodies, their blood, the darkness within. It's called fighting fire with fire.